Recording. This meeting is being recorded by the host. All right, got it. But I don't hear her.
It's because I'm not saying anything.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the point of this video is to give you all an opportunity to talk about your mom, of course, because she's our founder, but your family and, the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. And basically, let me start with the question of, do you feel like, as the children of Ginger and Mike, that there's a Jacobs family, I said ethos, but is there a Jacobs family words to live by? I guess it's the same thing.
I think that on both cases, remember is very important to both of them. With Dad, it was remember what happened, never forget, so it doesn't happen again.
Right.
With Mom, it's remember your history and understand how Jews have, in Dallas's case, enriched and really made an impact on the fabric and culture of Dallas. So I think remember is very important as far as a Jacobs ethos, so to speak.
I'd agree with that.
Okay.
And,
well
and I think Mom and Dad also set an example for us because of all their participation in the Jewish community over more than just the Dallas Jewish Historical Society and more than just the Holocaust Center. They were active in a lot of other organizations as well, and left it up to us to pick what we wanted to be active in.
And I think they also got carried on to the grandchildren, because they were very involved with my kids. And now they're all active in various things. I think 2 of them are working with the Historical Society and the Holocaust Center. So.
And I know at least one of them is sitting on the Federation board or a Federation committee or
right
something. So what activities, when you think about how your parents spent their time, what activities stand out to you? Obviously, with your dad, it's all the speaking that he did.
But before before that,
else?
He was very active in Israel Bonds because he was the president of the local Israel Bond chapter, and then we also did the on Kol Nidre, when they had the Israel Bonds that shares Israel. We were the ones who collected all the pledge cards and counted all the pledges and reported it to the rabbi. So we saw them very active in that. And then
Federation,
Federation and Jewish Family Service. And Mom was very busy with writing her book and kind of keeping the Bonim people together. So they were active in a lot of organizations. And then when we were a lot younger, we used to go to the the B'nai B'rith Institutes in Salado when we were kids, and that was always a lot of fun.
Did you really? I didn't realize that
Yeah.
y'all went.
It was
she
great.
talked about that briefly in her oral history, in the most recent oral history. She mentioned.
Yeah, Stagecoach Inn. It was like a rite of passage during the summer. Every summer we went for a number of years. It was lots of fun.
And there weren't many kids. I mean, the Woolens kids were there, so there was a full, some of them that just made family trips out of it. So plenty to do.
And Mother was also active in Texas Jewish Historical Society.
Right.
I think she was president at one point.
Yeah, I think she helped start that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So they were always busy with the organizations that they were involved in.
Right.
And then on top of that, Dad was also very active in soccer, in local soccer for a long time.
Right. So it sounds like that they were both hands-on as well as sitting on committees and boards and you know, things like
Sure.
that. Some people are one or the other, but it sounds like they, you know, didn't mind getting their hands dirty.
Right. And just in terms of mom's activities, I mean, daily would see stacks of papers like the Dallas Morning News or the Dallas Times Herald, and mom clipping any article there was in those papers that had anything to do with a Jewish person, a Jewish organization, a Jewish business, and things like that, to be kept for the archives.
Yes,
she also
it almost became a family joke.
Well, and also I started doing it, so I would have piles of papers in my kitchen on top of my window bench. And you know, sometimes mom would miss something and I would have it for her, but I'd cut them all out and I'd take them, and if she had duplicates, I guess she got rid of them, or maybe she gave them to y'all.
And then I also remember her, of course, doing oral histories with all the Jew, you know, older Jews in Dallas to try to get their story, to make sure it was on tape, and so there'd be memories of what was going on.
Yeah, we have pretty much converted almost all of those to almost all. We haven't done the VHS tapes yet, but we have done the cassette and some of the earlier other modes. And the ones that are just audio are on SoundCloud. And the ones that are video, obviously, are on YouTube.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, wow. That is great.
So Mark had found a whole bunch of videos, VCR tapes, and I actually started to watch one, and it was a video of an Israel bond function in 1976 or 75. Wow. And I don't know how long these tapes last. I just started going into it. So there's like, what, 8 tapes in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they degrade over time, the tape itself, but they can easily be converted to digital.
Yeah, so they might be, because you could tell that they were kind of like, either the photographer wasn't very good or they're getting hazy.
Probably a little of both, if I had to guess. Do you remember her interest? Obviously, you talked about her interest in history and in remembering Jewish history, and particularly in Dallas. Do you remember the founding or the starting of the Dallas Jewish Archives? I don't know, you were pretty young.
Well, you know, some of it had to do with, you know, getting together with Ruth Cann and getting things moving. And also, I think Mother became really motivated to do a lot of this when a lot of the Jewish institutions in South Dallas were being torn down to build the highway. So, you know, I think some of the synagogues were torn down, and Mother was just appalled at some of the things that should have been saved and weren't saved.
I remember her going and getting pieces. I think it was Temple Emmanuel when they took that down. Because she was afraid.
I think she did bring back the cornerstone. I want to say cornerstone. I'm not sure if that's right or not, but I think she did bring back a piece of it.
Yeah.
And it was pretty upsetting to her that all this stuff was just getting, you know, thrown away. And she really was intent on
gathering as much as she could.
Trying to preserve as much as she could before it was all gone.
Right.
Yeah, the only synagogue that's left, of course, is building is Tiferet. And I think
probably a lot of people don't even know about that.
Right, and I think it's an art studio, an artist studio now.
Something like that, yeah. And she, you know, she used to talk a lot about, you know, the good old days in South Dallas.
Right.
You know, the community was smaller. You had the community center on Pocahontas. And of course, that's where my parents met. And, all the shuls were located down there, or for the most part. So we used to hear a little bit about that off and on over the years. Early
Then
on,
she started
early on.
doing the tours so other people could learn about it.
Right.
And she
And
had an
that was, of
amazing
course, a little
memory.
bit much later on.
Yeah. And she had an amazing memory for everything. And for like anybody who, like on Park Row, all the neighbors and where they lived and who lived there and their family. And she could talk about their everybody was connected in some fashion. She always seemed to know who that was.
Yeah, I've noticed that actually about some of the other people who grew up down there, that they can tell you, this one lived next door, and next door to them was so-and-so, and next door to that family, and down the street was somebody else. Honestly, I couldn't tell you, maybe because I've lived too many places, but
Right.
I certainly couldn't tell you who my neighbors were down the street.
Debbie has a pretty good facility for that also, piecing everybody together.
Yeah. It's quite a
sister Debbie.
talent, and it certainly, how do you think she was able to get, she got people involved in a pretty serious way, whether
Because she was pushy.
She wouldn't take no for an answer.
She was very passionate about this. And I think that really motivated and inspired a lot of people to become involved. For her, it wasn't a throwaway thing. It was really part of her soul. And people picked up on that.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she had, the fact that she grew up in Dallas and knew everybody, I think that made a difference too, because she was there from the beginning. She wasn't just talking about something abstractly. She was talking something that was very near and dear to her heart because she'd lived it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that also had to do with Camp Bonim and the Hebrew School of Dallas, and just a lot of the things that were particular to her time and place that eventually died out, and a lot of people don't know about it. She wanted to preserve it.
Right. And I think partnering with Ruth Can helped a lot at the very beginning, because I think Ruth Can was somewhat of a force to be reckoned with at the time.
Is that right? We have very little information about her as compared to Ginger.
Yes, and of course that's Ruth passed away a long time ago, but she was of the E.M. Can family, and they had a clothing store in Preston Royal, Preston Forest, and they were pretty well known in their day and respected. And I think she probably went to Temple Manuel and had a presence there, would be my guess.
Yeah.
And she was also pretty passionate about it, about the Jewish community.
Yeah. And Mom adored her. She felt very strongly about her.
I forgot what she said in the interview, something about she was such a lady that she wouldn't argue with you if you disagreed with her. She would just find another way to say it. So that you were convinced, you were convinced that she must be right. Why do you think, you all are a different generation? Mark, you were president at one time. Debbie, some of your kids have been involved. Reuben, we have a lot of your BBYO t-shirts. What about the Dallas Jewish Historical Society is important today? Are we still relevant?
Oh, yes, I think so. Because there's my generation, well, not my generation, my kids' generation. And I think they need to know what Dallas was like, and, they're growing up in it, and that we were a thriving part of Dallas, and we helped build Dallas.
Mhm.
And then it's also, I think it's, when we were growing up, well, when my mother was growing up in South Dallas, of course, the community was a lot smaller. And then when we were growing up, there were what, 4 synagogues and temples, and then the city
Really
boomed,
3
and the
when you think about it.
Jewish community boomed, and it's kind of neat to know how it became what it is today.
Mhm.
And also, I think it's a good way to get people involved. I find I wish that the Jewish communities that are more in Plano and Frisco and some of the outlying towns would be a little bit more active in the central part of the community, which is where the Jewish community was when we were growing up.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's, you know, the response I often get is, especially for people who live further north and further north, is, well, I'm not from here. Why would you want my oral history? And I'd say, well, how long have you lived here? 40 years. You know, like
Well,
you
they
don't
live-
have to be born in Dallas.
Yeah, they
Right.
saw a
have
lot of changes.
watched the changes, you know.
Mhm.
A lot of things have happened in the last 5 years, 10 years,
Mhm.
you know, even.
And we've had waves of growth, you know, with the different communities moved from other countries to Dallas. You know, the South Africans came, the Russians came. I think there was a lot of people came from Latin America,
Mhm.
kind of depending on what was going on in the world.
Right,
And I
and
think
I
that
suspect we'll
story is
get
also
some
important.
Ukrainians as well.
Mhm.
Maybe.
We'll see.
So that, you know, those stories are, it's really interesting. I think people find it interesting how they wound up here. And even not necessarily from foreign countries, but you know, foreign countries like New York City and you know, California, because the city was growing and a lot of the businesses moved here, and a lot of people moved down here because the companies they were working for either moved down here or they moved to the Dallas area for family reasons, or because it was a good place for opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that's kind of
absolutely.
that's kind of can be kind of interesting
Yeah, I mean,
to
when you
explore
think
that.
about it, the retail
Mm-hmm.
market, you know, clothing manufacturing industry was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those, you know, have closed or people have gone on to other things. But, you know, people then came that were involved in the aerospace industry, and
Right.
people who got involved then in some of the computer stuff. So it's interesting. One of the things I heard recently from someone who was the past director of the Atlanta Jewish Historical Society, their museum, was, if we don't tell our own story, who will?
Right.
Right.
That's true.
We, you know, if we know the story of the Jewish community in Dallas, we understand what a tremendous impact we had as Dallas began and as Dallas grew. But if that story never gets told, it's like
It didn't exist.
yeah,
Mhm.
it's like we didn't exist, or we totally assimilated, or, you know, whatever
And
that
that
might be.
and that's why the Dallas Jewish Historical Society is still relevant and important. So exactly.
So these lessons that you've learned from your parents by their example,
Mm-hmm.
by their activities, by what they said at home, how have you manifested that in your own life? What kinds of things have you been involved in or paid attention to? You know, are there activities or organizations that you support that sort of
Well,
carries out that same idea?
well, I was president of my AZA chapter, Monsky. And then later on, I was president of the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, and I was also president of American Jewish Congress when we still had a chapter in Dallas. And we were actually, it covered this whole area, and we were like among the most active chapters in the country at that time. I've been on the board of Shereth Israel, Jewish Family Service, the Holocaust Center. So I was quite active in a lot of different organizations, less so now than I used to be, still active at the Shul. And I think a lot of that has been through the inspiration of mom and dad. And it's kind of nice because they never really pushed us to do any of these things. We just did it on our own because that's what we were interested in doing.
Right. Well, and the choice, your actually line of work, I think, is
Yes.
part of that.
Well, that's true.
Part of
Yeah,
that as
being a
well.
lawyer and doing immigration law, that was certainly part of my interest.
Yeah. Debbie, Reuben, either of you?
Back when the girls were young, I was president of my ORT chapter, which I can't even remember the name of it at this point in time. And I was semi-active in Hadassah a little bit. But then my kids fortunately became my focus, and
Right.
But
and then
they
I
all
had
went to Jewish day school. They went to Schechter.
they went to the Jewish day school, and 2 of them graduated from Yavna. And I had the kosher butcher,
Right.
which I tried to keep alive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the grocery stores won out, so very hard to survive in that. But I go to Chabad of Dallas, and when I'm in town, I'm usually in the kitchen putting their kiddushes together.
Right.
So I seem
we
to
know how
gravitate.
important that is.
Oh yeah,
Some people come just for the kiddush.
Oh yes, you can't have them starving. So I guess you could say I'm kind of active at Chabad in the sense when they need activity, when they have programs and stuff, and they need someone in the kitchen, that's where you'll find me.
Okay.
So.
And Reuben?
Yeah, I just try to be a good person.
Hey,
There you go.
good enough.
I
Yeah,
was involved in other things, not necessarily Jewish, but like
that's fine.
Ryan's house way back when, and
And Andy's the same way. He was involved in organizations, the West, what was it called, Reuben? The West Dallas
Business Association. Yeah, association. That we started together.
So in our own ways, we've all wanted to be active in the community, whether it was the Jewish community or the non-Jewish community, giving back to the community and helping support the community.
And I think that's one of the things mom and dad have taught us, was you need to give back to the community. So however you can do it, whether it's delivering shlachmonos baskets or working for Federation when they're doing their fundraiser on the phones, making calls. I even did that for a while, where they give you a handful of cards and you would call them about making their donations.
Oh yes.
So
we've all gotten those calls as well.
Yes. So, I think that was one thing mom and dad taught us. We need to give back.
Yeah, and I think it's important that they allowed you to choose your own path, choose your own method. because, you know, nobody has the stamina that they had
Right.
in this generation, I
Mhm.
don't think.
No, our parents were the ever ready batteries. They just kept going.
Okay, we're about to wrap up. So any last comments that you'd like to make about parents?
Well, you know,
Dallas?
I think specifically with Mom and the Dallas Jewish Historical Society, it was really a labor of love and commitment for her.
Mhm.
And I think she would be really proud of how the organization has developed, and would certainly be very active in growing the organization and continuing to see it do its good work, and even broaden it. I mean, she might, you know, there's so many things that have changed over the years technologically that I
Mhm.
think have really become relevant to the Historical Society, that she would, even though she wasn't very computer literate, she would still be very interested in keeping up, the organization keeping up with that,
Right.
and just keep on going, keep on preserving things, and being available for research, and maybe delving into areas that we haven't yet done enough in, and just really being a great spokesperson for the organization. And she'd be really happy at being honored like this.
Yeah,
Good.
You know, she
Yeah.
wasn't in this for the honor. She was in this for the love and passion that she had for the Historical Society.
Absolutely. Reuben, any last words?
no, I appreciate you all recognizing her this way.
We wouldn't be
And
here
Dad would be
without.
very proud also.
Mhm.
You know, he was very supportive of whatever Mom did, and it worked
Right.
both ways. She was very supportive of
Right.
what he did.
They're an
They
amazing
were
team
a
together.
great team. They're a
They
great
were.
team.
That's I saw it, and I hear it from other people as well.
Yeah, it's
But
very
anyway,
gratifying when I'm at things and people come up to me and they tell me all kinds of things about Mom and Dad. You know, how much they liked them, and how great they were for the community, and how much they're missed. It's really very, very sweet and very gratifying.
Exactly.
Big shoes to fill.
that's for sure. All right, I'm going to stop recording.